Welcome to the SkiBallin Show podcast, the football podcast version where you get to know your X's and O's from head to toe. This is DJ Ski coming in with you with the latest football news and football analysis over the past few months/weeks that have come to by. And I know it's kind of an awkward situation that I'm doing this during the off season of the NFL, of course. But there's a few things we're going to talk about today, and there's a few things that we want to get straightforward first. So the first thing and the biggest thing right now, of course, is Super Bowl 53. And my thoughts on it was obviously, it's nothing special. I mean, this Super Bowl is definitely the lowest low-scoring Super Bowl in history. So much defensive play. I did like it for the fact that there was just a lot of good defense out there, and my goodness, the punting game was so good. So good. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that just really do not care about special teams, but man, those punters worked their butts off that game, man. It was crazy. Yeah, awesome affair from the defensive standpoint and really from a special teams standpoint. So very good defensive affair, I thought. And obviously, as a whole, the entertainment aspect, not that great compared to other Super Bowls. Lowest ratings in, 10 years. Which, by the way, the lowest ratings thing, which is kind of funny to me, is that the lowest ratings are the lowest since the Super Bowl in 2008, which was Super Bowl 40, I want to say 2 or 3. I mean, either way, one of those, that one was the Giants beating the undefeated Patriots that year in 2008. The 16-0, well, actually, it was like 18-0 Patriots. 18-0 Patriots, and they couldn't go 19-0 because of that one Giants team that pretty much everybody wrote out. And that year was actually the highest ratings out of any Super Bowl ever during that year, which is crazy to me because, I mean, you look at it now, the lowest ratings ever since 2008, but in 2008 literally broke the record for Super Bowl ratings anyway. So this was Super Bowl 42, by the way, so it was a little bit off. But in any case, I mean, in 10 years, almost like 10 to 11 years, that's a kind of a big difference for me at least, because there's a whole different story between the Giants being the underdogs of this game, and it was one of the best Super Bowls I've ever seen. I mean, the Giants were written out completely, and they come in against this undefeated Patriots team, and everybody's saying there's no chance and this undefeated Patriots team is going to be the first team since the Miami Dolphins in the 70s to win the undefeated season. Obviously, it didn't happen, and then the Giants continued that in the second Super Bowl when they upset the Patriots again, and it just every time and now it seems that there was the Giants who have the Patriots number, So, but in this case, you have a Patriots and Rams team, a Rams team that's very, very young. I mean, they kind of rebuilt themselves in a matter of 3 years, with Sean McVay and Jared Goff and Todd Gurley, and then they get a lot of defensive players, but their defensive stats weren't that great. And they look like a Pro Bowl caliber defense. I mean, Marcus Peters, Aqib Talib, but Aaron Donald, and Ndamukong Suh on one defense. I mean, that literally sounds like, and Dante Fowler got traded during the season too. I mean, it literally sounded like it had to be the number one defense. But surprisingly enough, despite Aaron Donald's prowess, despite how good these corners are, they don't have a great linebacker core. And this is one thing I touched on my radio show before in WLRA, is that the linebacker core is also going to be a very big part of your defense. I mean, as the Giants in the 1990s with Lawrence Taylor, they had a run-stopping defense that was able to penetrate the line early. And because of that, we always say defense wins championships. But that defense doesn't start until you fix the linebacker core. You can have a great interior line, for me at least. You can have a great interior line. You can have a great interior lineman like Ndamukong Suh and Aaron Donald, create a lot of pressure, and throw the quarterback off his game. But even Ndamukong Suh really wasn't too big of a star as he should be, because he's getting old. Obviously, his prime has kind of gone by at this point. And Aaron Donald is just like, it looks like it's spiking up every year. But in any case, like I said, you can have as much pressure on the quarterback as you want, And you can have pretty much as much, defensive zone coverage, cover 3 as much as you want, like the Rams did, pretty much cover 3 buzz all day. But it's not going to matter in the long run if you can't shut down the run within that interior line. Because the linebacker core, for me, is the big part that shuts down the run game first, right? Because the linebackers will get there faster. They will fill those gaps faster. The corners and safeties can't do that because they, of course, have to be, way behind the line of scrimmage. And they have to start pretty much rather early if they want to blitz anyway. And for the interior linemen, they can fill those gaps, but it might take some more time depending on the blocking scheme for the offensive line, and depending if it's a zone block. It really depends on how the offensive line wants to do it. But in any case, the linebackers will fill in those gaps faster. The problem with it is that the Rams don't blitz at all. Because they figure because they have a great interior line that we don't need to blitz. We'll just create pressure. We'll just collapse the pocket. And in the run game, we'll just fill those gaps with all those 4 guys. And as a result, they didn't really need to blitz. And even if they did blitz, I feel that those linebackers wouldn't fill the gap enough because they're not, the linebackers just aren't as prowess as the other linebacker cores out there. I mean, you could look at a team like Jacksonville who's able to shut down and run pretty much every year. You look at a team like the Vikings. They have great linebacker cores and defensive cores. They may not have necessarily the best secondary out there anymore, but they have a great run-stopping defense. Or the Ravens, the Baltimore Ravens, the best defense in the league. Great linebacker core led by Terrell Suggs, the veteran linebacker, and you also have a pretty great secondary, too, behind you. They're actually not really as known for their interior line, or at least they weren't until pretty much the late half of the season where they created so much more pressure and got a lot more sack totals. The same thing in the playoffs. Their interior pressure was great in the playoffs, but it took them time to get there, and it started with the linebackers first shutting down the run game. So because of that, the Rams couldn't stop the run this season, is my point. And they definitely didn't show that they could stop the run in the Super Bowl either against Sony Michel. And on top of it, they run a lot of zone coverage. They run a lot of cover 3. And the one thing you always know about Brady is that he eats zone coverage alive, and especially cover 3. Cover 3 already, you can already look at Super Bowl 51 as a great example of this, where the Atlanta Falcons, they pretty much, all they did was run cover 3 that entire second half. And that's how the Patriots were able to come back. So the way cover 3 works is that pretty much everything across the field is cut, or if the players can be talented enough to know where their zone assignments are, pretty much the entire field will be covered. And if they're fast enough, except everything underneath is open. So that's why guys like James White and running backs that Tom Brady uses in the offensive system, Belichick uses in his offensive system, are able to thrive off of that, because the cover 3 is designed to cover everything deep and mid zone, and sometimes outside of on the sidelines. But everything is open underneath, and can be sometimes a seam between the 2 safeties in the middle of the field. Sometimes, if that does allow. But what Brady did, and that's why James White became so prominent in the second half, was because all he did was just run underneath routes, and Brady was just eating them alive with yards after catch with him. And we could convert first down after first down, and they would just go march down the field and score more. That's exactly how they won. It's just the Falcons never changed it up because they felt too comfortable in the cover 3. Now, as a Falcons fan, I get it, because when you become so comfortable in something, even if we ask the LA Chargers, my bad, the Los Angeles Chargers this year, who all they did was run cover 3. 90% of their defensive plays was cover 3. And they run that in the playoffs against Brady 90% of the time too, and they get blown out, completely blown out in the AFC divisional. Cover 3 is literally it's just breakfast for Brady. It really is. You just can't run. And if you do, sometimes it's okay, but you can't run it 90% of the time. You can't run any defense 90% of the time against Brady because he's going to figure it out within a quarter, and he'll just demolish you for it. That's the biggest problem about Brady and this Patriots team, is that they're not these one-trick ponies that you can trick by one defensive scheme, which is why the Titans were able to win in the regular season, and that to me is actually kind of the most impressive win for that season, or this past season, was the Titans beating the Patriots. What they did was they ran tight man coverage most of the game, which usually does work, especially if the corners are very well versed in it. But they also created a lot of pressure. They created a lot of pressure, and they blitzed a lot. And they also deceived the blitz by bringing in, let's say, like 6 different linemen, I believe. There's one play where they showed a 6-man blitz, and then 2 guys went back in coverage instead right at the snap, and it was actually just a 4-man pressure. And it threw Brady off because he was throwing some kind of slant route to that middle of the field, and he didn't realize that the linebackers were actually going to drop back in zone coverage, and they make a play out of it. Pass deflection, interception, I forget which one exactly it was. But you'll find examples of this in the Tennessee Titans game. If you look at the film between those two in that game, you'll see a lot of man coverage that the Titans ran, and you'll see that they blitzed a lot, and they threw Brady off his game. And then one thing that Brady really did in that game, too, is he went to Josh Gordon way too much. Is that he, like, after the first 2 tries of, like, incompleting Josh Gordon, he kept thinking, oh, he's going to catch it at some point, right? Even though he's in man coverage. Josh Gordon's this big wide receiver. He's so physical. He can get off of those corners, right? He just kept throwing them, and he kept either missing them or the corner, which would either be Adoree Jackson or Malcolm Butler, who of course knows Tom Brady pretty well, that he would just deflect it, that they would just either break up the pass or he would just completely miss him because it was just miscommunication between them, or the route was mistimed or whatever because the corner kept pressing him. So stuff like that, will throw Brady off his game. But the Rams didn't do that. And although they stopped Brady enough to the point where he didn't score until the fourth quarter, there's this whole thing about Brady too, is that you keep giving him the ball, he's going to score. And that's really the biggest. I think this is kind of a thing that's going to change on the league really fast too, is that this kind of same concept goes for a lot of these high-powered offenses like Kansas City, like the Indianapolis Colts with Andrew Luck now. If you keep giving them the ball, at some point they're going to score. And the Rams, they're not as high-powered of a team. And we know, especially with that Bears game, that their offense can be shut down if you play it correctly. The Patriots, on the other hand, they have to be played differently. And in a way, they also have to be prepared for. Not only prepared for, but you also have to show different things against the Patriots. But that might go for any other team. I mean, even with the Kansas City Chiefs, that's why the AFC Championship game, in my opinion, was really good. It's just probably the best game in the entire playoffs, was just because the defenses were okay, but in the end, one of these defenses had to get more stops than the other, and the Patriots got the stops when they needed to in the first half and completely shut off the Kansas City offense, and then they were able to score more, but then the situation reversed in the second half, and the Chiefs were able to tie until they went to overtime, and then, of course, there's another thing now where it's like, with these high-powered offenses, it's like, when you go to overtime, whoever's going to win that toss is just going to win the game. Now, I did unfortunately think that in the NFC Championship game, but Drew Brees kind of debunked me for that one. So I don't even know what he was thinking on that play. Just throw under pressure, just take the sack. I would have rather just took the sack instead of giving up the throw, and that the Rams could create turnovers, but it was just an ill-advised throw. It's definitely one that he'll remember, but dang, the Saints definitely should have won that game for a number of reasons besides, of course, the penalties. All right, in any case, that was pretty much the Super Bowl. We're heading into the offseason, but there is a little thing that's going on right now, and it's called the AAF League. And for those of you who don't know, the AAF League actually is kind of trying to be operated in a minor league way for the NFL now. So this is a new football league that just started up. Their inaugural season is this season. They just started their first few games. So there's a total of 8 teams. It serves as a minor league system, like I said, for the NFL, because the NFL does actually own this league now. And this is kind of compared to other old leagues that the NFL had or owned. It's just this one looks like it could be actually legit. And it didn't look bad to me, actually. It really didn't. It kind of looked, there was some mixed reviews. For me, it actually kind of looked like a college football game, but the ratings were pretty good. I mean, they surpassed an NBA game, so somehow one of those games surpassed a whole NBA game, I guess. So somehow it's doing good when it was broadcast on NFL Network. Again, we'll see how this goes because this just did start up, and I mean, it was announced like last year. So we'll see how it goes, but potentially it could be a minor league system for the NFL. But again, we have to really take a couple years in seasons to make this a thing, because you think of like the other NFL affiliates that they try to do, like NFL Europe, like those kind of leagues, or even, the AFL, that you have to kind of give this time, because NFL Europe was just a man. They just lost money every season. I mean, they invested a lot of money into it, but I don't really think the NFL knew exactly what they were getting into when they were trying to involve so many different countries in it, which is a great idea. Like I said, it's a great concept on paper, but I don't think they knew exactly what they were getting into. There was just so much money lost. You have to really, I mean, you also have to go into like foreign relations at that point with other countries and different franchises, where those franchises are going, and then the NFL has to obviously owns all of this. So it's like they have to deal with it, and they also have to deal with the people in those countries as well, especially since the franchises kept moving different places and those different countries. I mean, even one of the Spanish teams, even one of those teams in Spain got owned by FC Barcelona at one point, and they became like labeled as FC whatever team that was. It was like some kind of, I think it was like Barca Dragons or something. In any case, the NFL has to deal with that too. So it's like, I don't think they exactly knew what they were getting into when this happened. So it did have a pretty good running for, the 10-ish years. I mean, because it got suspended so many times too. Like it pretty much got suspended like every 3 or 2 years or so. Probably suspended for like a total of 5 years out of its entire running. So there was so many different things that they had to deal with. And then you have other leagues like the CFL, of course, that's just based on Canada. So NFL probably just doesn't even really look at it because it's just Canadian football. Different rules and everything too. So they don't really look at it too much. I mean, they could still get players off of it. They're not going to draft those players off of it. They could still have tryouts for those players, and if they do well, they still will sign them, right? I mean, we've seen that before with like guys like Doug Flutie. Doug Flutie, who started in the CFL. And even Kurt Warner started in NFL Europe. James Harrison started in NFL Europe. So those guys do well, then, the NFL could sign them. But again, CFL is not an NFL affiliate, so they don't really look at them too much. So, and then there's arena football, of course, but then their entire rule set is completely different. And plus, the field is shortened much more. There's so many other different rules. Just know that the NFL is definitely not going to look at arena football either as a experience kind of thing too. So really, the only thing that they had going for them as a minor league system was college football. And obviously, we know that in other major sports, they don't just have a college, look. They have other minor league systems or other places they can go to. Besides the NBA, I don't know exactly how the NBA does it. But I know the MLB and the NHL have. I mean, the MLB has a minor league system. The NHL has so many minor league systems they could look into to draft players. I mean, they draft pretty much like 80% of the draft. NHL draft at this probably from Europe at this point. Elias Pettersson, Austin Matthews. I mean, well, actually, Austin Matthews did start in Canada, but I mean, technically he was drafted from Switzerland. Austin Matthews was part of them for a couple years, and then they drafted him, of course, first of all, for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Elias Pettersson, Swedish League. These top guys from pretty much everywhere. And I mean, you could even talk about all the Russian guys in the NHL. So, pretty much everybody they get is not even from America or not even from Canada sometimes. A lot of it is majority of Canada, of course. But they get so much of it, they get a huge majority of it to Europe, too. So, they have so many different minor league systems from not only just all across Europe, but they also even have colleges and American leagues and AHL, of course. So, I mean, the NHL has great minor league systems to work with, and the NFL just doesn't have that. And part of me kind of wishes that the NFL could have this kind of minor league. I mean, they're so big. The league itself is so big. They have so much more money than the NHL does. I mean, they could make these minor league systems if they take the time to invest in it. And the NHL was smart in doing so that they're going to invest in some of these minor league systems, and they're going to look at these minor league systems. NFL is just not – they just don't have enough leagues that they could have for a minor league system like that. So finally they're getting to one – possibly getting into one with the AAF. So we'll see how that goes for them. But in any case, hopefully that will get them some more – not only more ratings for them, but also more ratings for this minor league league, which does look pretty good. I mean, there's a total of 8 teams. The rules are a little bit different. I mean, you do have to go for 2-point conversions. There is no field goal kicks. Extra point field goal kicks. There's no kickoff, so everybody starts at the 25, which in my opinion actually really is fair. I mean, pretty much you don't really see a lot of kick returns, unfortunately, these days, which unfortunately, I mean, it was one of the most exciting things, of course, in football, but because people don't want to be endangered about being scored on against special teams, they're pretty much just taking a lot of kickoffs to the back of the goal line anyway. So we see a lot of touchbacks anyway. But in any case, yeah, hopefully this new league does well, and hopefully, even though despite that there's these new rule changes, they do good still anyway. I mean, they even have a full website. You can check them out. It is at AAF.com. And it's actually pretty good. It actually looks really good. So like I said, there's a total of 8 teams, and of course this is just that by itself can be expanded upon. Those 8 teams can be expanded upon, of course, in the future. But the way this is now is that there's 8 teams. There's 2 games on Saturday, 2 games on Sunday, and there's going to be a 14 playoff, of course, within the season, and there's also a 10-week season as well, and they actually even have a phone app already for this too, I think. So that's crazy. So yeah, this looks pretty good. And the 8 teams, just for reference, by the way, are Orlando Apollos, the San Antonio Commanders, the San Diego Fleets, the Memphis Express, the Birmingham Iron. I don't even know how to say that city. I forget Alabama. I'm sorry. Atlanta Legends, Arizona Hotshots, Salt Lake Stallions. There we go. Like I said, it doesn't look too bad. From my standpoint, it didn't look too bad. I think it has room to grow. To me, it didn't look too terrible. The one rule I kind of, despite the rule changes, they're pretty good. Some people won't like it. Some people will like it. I personally think it's a great idea. There's the one thing I don't kind of like, but I also get why they did it, is that they don't allow more than 5 guys to blitz across the line of scrimmage. Now, I get it. They don't want to do it because player safety, protect the quarterback, and all that. Like I said, people will like this, people won't like this. So I kind of look at this for both sides and say, well, they're kind of making it easier for the quarterback, but at the same time, I get it because player safety is an issue. And, the whole quarterback hits that we had in the NFL season were also controversial. I do get it. So, but again, we'll see where it goes. Anything could really happen. Hopefully the league will do well, and hopefully they will expand more, and hopefully the NFL uses it as an actual minor league system. All right, so that will do it for this week's podcast of the SkiBallin Show. Next week, we are going to go into a segment I call the season predictions record. What I did is that even though the time schedule for all the weeks and stuff like that is not generated yet for next season, the opponents of each team has been determined already. So what I did is I made a kind of like a mock schedule. It's not going to be complete. I'm not going to do a full-on schedule because that takes so much time and effort. But what I did is I picked out each one of the teams and each one of their divisions. For next week's show, we're gonna do the AFC North next week and the AFC South the following week. And what I did was we're gonna have a schedule of each of those teams in that division, and I will do a prediction of their record and go through each of the team's opponents. See if they win or lose or not, where they are as well, home or away, and predict their record for that one and whether or not they'll make the playoffs or even win their division that year. So we'll do that for pretty much the next few weeks until the combine and the draft rolls around, and then we'll kind of get into the combine and the drafts and the college players, and the grading, stuff like that. So we'll get into that a little more in the next few weeks as well. Thank you for joining this week's SkiBallin Show Football Podcast. We'll see you next week when we start our season predictions, starting with the AFC North. And until then, we hand the ball off to you. See you next week.